First, in the name of Deputy Sean Kenny, to the Minister for Environment, Community and Local Government, the delay by NAMA in the handing over of apartments at Calderwood Court, Drumcondra, Dublin 9 to the National Association of Building Cooperatives. The Deputy has 4 minutes to make an initial statement.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and I want to thank the Cancórla for selecting the topical issue. I didn't think it was going to be this late. I also want to thank the Minister for coming into the House to reply. As we know, Cancórla, there is a serious housing problem in the state, particularly in the City of Dublin, in relation to providing social housing accommodation for the large numbers on our housing waiting lists. The 13 apartments at Calderwood Court, Drumcondra, which is the subject of this topical debate, were constructed 7 years ago during the property bubble. Since then, and before the property bubble burst, since that time these apartments were uninhabited, and indeed in that respect they are in some ways symptomatic of what happened during that particular property crash. NAMA, through its Assets Residential Property Service, began this year to carry out a ghost estate transformation at Calderwood Court to carry out remedial works. I understand that many difficulties only became apparent when the remedial work commenced. A new roof had to be fitted due to the extent of the disrepair, and remedial works for water damage had also to be carried out. It was originally expected that the remedial work would be completed before the end of this year so that they could be allocated. I am now being told that it will be Q1 in 2015 before the remedial work is completed. NAMA agreed to transfer the Calderwood Court apartments, which were in liquidation, to NABCO for allocation of social housing to housing applicants on the Dublin City Council housing list. NABCO received nominations from Dublin City Council, and I understand that NABCO have interviewed and selected the families who have been ready to move into their homes, their new homes, for some time. A number of families who are waiting to move in are constituents of mine. Their current rental leases are due to expire, and they are fearful that they may become homeless before the apartments in Calderwood Court are completed and ready to move in. I welcome, Cathaoirleach, the setting up of the Dublin Housing Task Force initiative by Minister Alan Kelly to fast-track the provision of social housing accommodation in the city. I would ask the task force to look at how the completion of the apartments at Calderwood Court could be expedited so the families who are waiting for this accommodation can move in as soon as possible. Thank you.
And Tara, Minister Anne Phelan has 4 minutes.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. I want to thank Deputy Kenny for raising this very important issue, particularly at this time of the year. The Department continues to work closely and successfully with NAMA, the housing agency, local authorities and approved housing bodies in relation to the delivery of social housing. To the end of Q3 this year, over 2,000 available units identified by NAMA have been confirmed by local authorities as being suitable for social housing. Of this portfolio of properties, some 926 units have been contracted or committed for social housing use at this point. A further 486 properties are in process, whereby active negotiation is ongoing by all parties concerned or where a detailed appraisal is being carried out. The remaining 709 units are currently under consideration and require further appraisal with a view to delivery in 2015 and 2016. An additional 507 properties are being evaluated to determine demand and suitability for social housing. Updated information in relation to the delivery of NAMA source units for Q4 of this year is currently being finalised and will be made available on the Housing Agency's website when complete. It is clear that significant progress has been made in respect of delivery from NAMA, which has been greatly aided by the introduction by NAMA of the National Assets Residential Property Services Limited Special Purpose Vehicle, the SPV, for delivery. Before any units can be acquired by the NAMA SPV and made available as social housing, there are a number of issues that must be finalised. These issues include any completion works required, the resolution of outstanding planning, development contribution or legal issues, and ensuring compliance with any requirements under the multi-unit development legislation. In respect of the apartments at Calderwood, Drumcondra, mentioned by the Deputy, the Department is working closely with NABCO, as you said yourself, NAMA, Dublin City Council and the Housing Agency in order to expedite timely delivery. The units concerned have received full funding approval from the Department of the Environment, which represents a commitment to fund these units for the length of the agreement. It is important to note that the process engaged in with respect to delivery of units at Calderwood involves a significant multi-unit transaction which adds to the complexity of getting agreement from all relevant parties, who must ensure that all legal and financial requirements are dealt with in full. Once all legal and financial processes have been completed, the remaining lease agreements, including the various stakeholders which are being processed in a parallel process, can be completed. Finally, once all required processes are completed by Dublin City Council will allocate the units without delay. Minister Kelly has asked that this be carried out as quickly as possible. I am confident that these units will be allocated in 2015 and that more generally the significant delivery of NAMA units that has been achieved in 2014 under this process will continue into 2015. Thank you. Ciancura.
2 minutes for a supplementary.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. And I want to thank the Minister for the reply and for her indication that the Minister will talk to NAMA about expediting this. This is the second time that something like this has happened in my constituency. Earlier in the summer we had a similar situation in Belmain, and both of them are quite similar insofar as that the families who were selected for the accommodation were given to understand that these apartments would be ready, much earlier than they were actually completed. And it would appear to me that there is some need for Dublin City Council, NABCO, the NAMA, and all of these agencies to try and coordinate their efforts to be able to give a clearer prediction to housing applicants as to when they can really realistically move in, because I think there's nothing worse than giving somebody a sort of an optimistic forecast and then having to roll back from that and tell them that it won't happen until much later, particularly because many people in those situations, some of them are actually homeless, some are in rented accommodation where their leases are expired. I know in one case where the lease is expiring because the owner wants to get the house back because one of his family is coming back from Australia and all this kind of thing. And this kind of thing happens frequently. And you have a conflict between one person wanting to move in and somebody else being forced out. And I think that there is, as I said, a need for better coordination between NAMA and the voluntary housing associations, or I think the approved housing bodies as they are known, and the City Council, to set more realistic targets for completion and for moving people in. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Minister. You have 2 minutes to reply.
Thank you, Ciancura, and indeed I would like to thank the Deputy, and I do understand the frustrations that the Deputy is experiencing, and indeed in turn I do understand the frustrations that the people that you're trying to house are facing, as well. And it is very, very difficult when you're on the list and you feel the promise is there, but it's in a way it's out of your control, because so many of these other people have to get, and I don't like using the phrase getting your ducks in a row, but in a way that is what we have to do. And I take note of what you're saying, that we have to have a very targeted approach to this. And indeed, I think this is exactly what Minister Kelly is achieving, and I think that Minister Kelly, has had some great success in just the couple of months that he has taken over this brief. And the total targeted provision of over 110 1,000 social housing units through the delivery of 35,000 new social housing units and meeting the housing needs of some 75,000 households through the Housing Assistance Payment and Rental Accommodation Scheme will address the needs of the 90,000 on the housing waiting list in full, with flexibility to meet future demand. In particular, in relation to the delivery of units at Calderwood, Drumcondra, Minister Kelly is satisfied that all parties are committed to achieving speedy delivery of these units, and he has asked that these units be allocated as soon as possible. In line with the social housing strategy, the Minister remains committed to maximising the delivery of social housing units through various mechanisms, including NAMA-sourced units. And I know indeed, Count Corlett, that I myself sat on the Labour Party committee, looking at social housing and how particularly important it is. And I accept the deputy raising this issue. It's particularly, important, and we just want to get on with the job now. And I think Minister Kelly is extremely determined to do that, and is indeed, as I said before, has achieved some progress in this area.
Thanks, Minister.